You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Justin Smith, also known as the Snake Man and Mr. Tobacco. So,
What's happening?
Justin, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do professionally.
Well, I'm Justin Smith. What don't I do, man? I do a lot. As far as work goes, I'm a tobacconist at a local cigar shop, Beaufort Tobacco here in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is my hometown. Outside of that, I operate Palmetto Coast Exotics, which is hobby business, basically focused on snakes and mostly green tree pythons. I do two podcasts as well. I do the Herpeticulture podcast with my buddy Jacob, and the Chondrocast, which is completely dedicated to green tree pythons, and that one I do with some revolving guests and some friends. And I do a little bit of photography when I have time.
There's so much to take in right there. I want to talk about, first of all, let's talk about working at a tobacco shop.
Yeah.
Okay, for an individual like myself, I know you saw my Facebook profile picture. You were like, "Oh, you're a tobacco," and you're like analyzing the cigar. And I chalk up my expertise when it comes to smoking a cigar as there's a Family Guy episode where these two kids on bikes, they're about 13, 14 years old, and they try a cigar and they go and start coughing real bad and they go, "Oh my God, I love cigars." And I'm like, that's literally me. Because I walked in there, I'm like, I'm gonna get a couple graduation cigars. I'm gonna go all luxury out and actually buy one of those instead of a stupid Swisher. And then next thing I know, I walk into this place. I was a freaking kid in a damn candy store. I'm like, holy shit, what is these cigars that I'm seeing? Everything looks so exotic. I feel like I should be walking into like a Godfather movie or something.
It's overwhelming, man, for a lot of people.
Now, someone trying to navigate all that, what advice can you give them?
Typically, if we have someone come in, I can usually tell just in the first minute or so of talking to them if they're kind of new to smoking, if it's something they're getting into, if it's something they're buying for somebody else. And so normally the first question we'll ask them is, if you're buying for somebody else or even for themselves, is how often do they or you smoke? And that kind of gives us a good gauge of, if there's someone that smokes daily, every night, maybe they have some bourbon or something at night with a small cigar or whatever. We know that if they smoke a lot, then they can probably handle some of the stronger stuff. Like they can, they're probably more into the bolder. And sometimes some of them know what brands they like. Brand loyalty is very big in cigars. There's guys that, Padron that's their cigar, that's their brand, that's all they smoke. Some guys it's Perdomo, some guys it's Romacraft, like me. I'm a big Romacraft fan, which is why when I saw your profile picture, the band on that cigar looks just like a Romacraft Cro-Magnon, and so I got all excited because I was like, he smokes cigars and he likes the really good ones. So
yeah,
and then I looked closer, I was like, wait, I don't know what that is.
I chose one. I was like, do you have one that tastes like I'm not smoking a cigar? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you have one that's like, you know Starbucks Frappuccinos, right? Can you give me the one that would be like the double pump? The
equivalent.
Yeah, the one that would basically be a milkshake, not really an actual coffee. And she's like, oh, I see what you're – and then she pointed me to like this mint one. And I was like, yeah, and I'm sitting there trying – she's like, yeah, you're going to use one of these types of matches. We're going to give you one of these. I'm like, what is happening? I can't use a lighter for it. No. That ruins the flavor. I'm like, so much. But like what you're talking about, different brands, different styles. I was walking and looking through the price ranges of these cigars. And for a kid like me, college kid, budget, I like spending $5 on t-shirts a lot. I walked in there thinking I can easily get, a cigar for $5. Yeah, not a good one. Not one that's going to last. Not one that's going to create. They had one that it looked like if you took a mummy, like the wrapping that you would wrap in a mummy, like you took King Tut's fucking wrappings and rolled it up with tobacco inside. There was one that looked exactly like that. I was like, where'd this come from? She goes, oh, that's what's known as they wrapped it in banana leaf. It's been aged, and they started going off. I'm like, Is this like wine? Is
It's
this
a
like
lot like wine, man. It is unbelievable how much cigars are like wine.
is there
It's
is there really such an impact in like the age of them and the consistency, like who makes the brand?
a lot of it is about. So there's a lot of factors that contribute to what a cigar tastes like, just like wine. So uh, you have three parts to a cigar. You have a filler, wrapper, and a binder. The wrapper is that outside leaf, and that's where a solid majority of a cigar's flavor is actually going to come from. Because if you smoked a cigar without the wrapper on it, it really wouldn't taste that great. The filler and wrapper, or the filler and the binder, aren't meant to be like the powerhouse of the cigar. All three parts are really meant to work together to give you the flavor profile that you get out of them. And so when you start from that aspect, it just branches off from there. You have some that the blends are three different tobaccos from three different countries. Some of them are from all the same country. You can have blends of Dominican and Nicaraguan. Ecuadorian Connecticut is very popular. It's a lot like wine, and even the regions in those countries, especially Nicaragua, like you have Jalapa and Condega and Esteli. Uh, those are all going to be fairly different as well to some degree, because different elevations, different soil pH, like a lot of it goes into it. And when you put all that together on top of the different sizes, which also affect the flavor, the different ring gauges, different lengths, different shapes. It's literally infinite combinations.
It's an actual science that goes behind it.
It is. But the really cool thing, one of the things I love the most about cigars, is that the actual process of it really hasn't changed much since they were first a thing. Uh, they're all, every premium cigar in the industry is hand rolled, completely handmade, 100% natural tobacco. None of the like Swisher or Phillies things that you were talking about, where it's like this brown paperish tobacco pulp that they wrap and that's a lot of people like to lump all tobacco together, and cigars compared to like the tobacco that's processed for cigarettes. Cigarettes have hundreds of other additives in them. Cigars, it's literally one ingredient, and that's natural tobacco.
Yeah, I always chalk it up to the example, like, even though I try and be as manly as possible when I smoke a cigar and try and look
Mm-hmm.
as badass when I do it, I feel like I should be wearing a handlebar mustache. Um, I still try and get one that does not taste anything like tobacco when it comes to like a mint, a peach, something that doesn't really have that taste to it, because I do like the smell of a nice like tobacco. It's a good
Mm-hmm.
smell. I have a candle that's blueberry and tobacco. And yeah, that's right. I said a candle. And it's funny because it gets so stigmatized when people talk about tobacco. They immediately think
Yeah.
the person that smokes a pack of Marlboros in a day and he deals with some type of heavy lung poisoning. And I'm like, actually, tobacco, when it comes into a cigar, it's been naturally like created through the process of
Yeah.
growing it and the things they do behind that. It's a giant research, everything that goes into the background of it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, it also has less damaging effects onto your lungs compared to just a regular cigarette that are filled with additives and these other types of things that make it not so pure.
Yeah, and the FDA actually did a study at one point on cigars specifically, and a lot of people are surprised to find out that their findings in that were that smoking 1 to 2 cigars a day really had no detrimental health effects. Um, is it better than not smoking at all? No. I mean, tobacco is tobacco, but with an asterisk and like a caveat, uh, it's 100% natural. You're not inhaling it. They've done studies where they see that when they have cigarette smokers switch to cigars, the amount of smoke they're actually inhaling is considerably less than what they were with cigarettes. With all the stuff with vaping going on right now, to me the vaping thing is kind of funny, because it's almost like cigarettes when they first came out. Everyone started smoking them. No one really questioned it. No one bothered to say like, hey, this actually might be bad for us. Let's kind of like hang out for a bit and see what happens.
But did you hear
Everyone
the
just
evidence they found out about vaping? They actually figured out the ones with all these people getting holes in their lungs and these types of sorts is
mm-hmm.
actually because they're one of two reasons. One reason was because they're making their own juices, a bunch of kids
Oh,
buying
okay.
supplies
Yeah.
to do that, and they're
Mhm.
lacing it with drugs such as LSD and such other types
What?
of really,
Really?
really shit you shouldn't be messing with.
That's
Not
fucking
buying
nuts.
not buying from a reputable dealer. And
Mhm.
also there was just a recent study that just came out. It was actually published, I think, yesterday. Um, they were doing it was linked to cannabis.
Really?
The amount of oils and the types of
Yeah.
concentration through that juice, it has a permeating effect onto your lungs.
Too much of
And
a good thing.
yeah, so everybody going around like, oh, I'm not smoking vape, I'm smoking the CBD, I'm smoking this.
Mhm.
Well, those oils actually aren't done processed a lot correctly, especially when you're buying from some shady dude outside of his house. Like,
Right.
there's stuff that needs to be looked at. And I'm like,
Mhm.
throughout history, smoking cigars have been a thing in celebration.
Yeah.
In a wedding, there's a bunch of people that get together. I do them once, I think, every year on my birthday is a main one for me. Like, because it's a moment. Because I think people look at it in a really bad light, only on the concept of all the health risks that go with it.
Right.
It's a good way to connect with friends, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. That's working in a cigar shop. I have to say that's one of the coolest things is you get people from all walks of life. A lot of people think that cigars are like this sort of highbrow, like high society kind of thing, and they're really not. A lot of our customers are very much blue collar guys. Uh, you working in the cigar shop, we get a lot of tourists, especially this time of year here in South Carolina on the coast. So we get a lot of people that come in and hang out, and I mean, you meet people that come from all walks of life. You get people that have come from all different political backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and you can have a group of 10 guys in there smoking. They can disagree on everything, but it doesn't really matter because everyone's just like we're all sort of the great equalizer in a sense. Like everyone's there for sort of the same thing,
And
and it's
the best part is like it kind of confines you to that spot when you smoke a cigar too. It's not something you can just smoke and go do something.
mhm.
You know, it's
Yep.
something when you is immediately when you light the match and bring it up to the cigar, you're committing to like at least a good 30, 40 minutes of just sitting there and kind of
Oh
having
yeah, at
conversation.
least. Yeah, if not longer than that. Some of them, some guys will sit there and maybe they come in and hang out and they do some work. Maybe they work remotely and they'll just come in and they'll hang out and kick it. Some of them are talkative, some of them aren't. If they're not, no big deal. It doesn't bother me. I just kind of let people do their own thing. Some of them, they want restaurant recommendations, and you kind of almost become concierge by default. Um,
I've been looked at down on just going into a cigar shop kind of because there's this older guy when I went in there and he was sitting in this leather black like recliner watching TV
hmm
inside of the shop. And I'm like, there's always that guy that needs to be in there. There always needs to be that one dude, the stereotypical guy that's in the cigar shop just chilling, watching like an old
hmm
film. And I'm sitting there looking at all these brands, grabbing them like, this one comes in a special case. Whoa, this one,
Yeah.
whoa. And I'm like, I started drifting over to the flavored ones. I was like, all right, these are pretty cool. And then I obviously had to take a picture with the biggest badass one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was talking to him and I was like, so how long have you been smoking cigars? He's like, I've been doing it since I was younger than you. And I'm like, but isn't the legal age? And he goes, well, back then this wasn't a legal
Back then
age
there
thing.
was no legal age.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, so tell me about your experience with it. He goes, it's a way of relaxing. Like I used to smoke cigars with my fathers, and some of the fondest moments of my life
hmm
were through that. And I have one really, really good experience with it on my birthday. My 18th birthday. I'm born New Year's Eve, so it's the last day of the year. And we had a storm when on my birthday, and it was something. It was like 11 o'clock at night, me and my buddy out by the beach, just chilling in a couple bonfire, like just a bonfire in front of us, a couple
hmm
beach chairs. And we're just watching the water and we're just sitting there shooting the shit. Like we don't even know exactly what was said, but we're
Yeah.
sitting there just enjoying kind of like our own company.
Yeah. There's something very cathartic about it. It's I don't know. Like I said, it just brings everybody together. Like me and my buddies, anytime we hang out, which we don't hang out as much as we used to, but they're big cigar guys, and so anytime we're hanging out, we're smoking cigars, we're just hanging out, and like you said, kind of just shooting shit. And
How'd you get started into the tobacco industry?
that. So I've only been in cigars for I think 4 or 5 years now, maybe 6. It's my dad and a handful of other family members started smoking them, and of course, naturally, I kind of got interested in trying them, and eventually did and started out with some of the flavored ones like you talk about. And a lot of people do start out with the flavored ones. There's absolutely nothing wrong with those. If you like them, you like them. You'll come to find that a lot of cigar guys that have been in cigars a long time, they usually don't even smoke those anymore. They get to a point where they're not into them. But for me, I started with the flavored stuff. Then I started to rack up a tab at the shop I work at. And so I went to the owner and I was like, hey, like, he needed some extra help. He's like, you want to work a few hours a week? And I was like, yeah, sure. Pay off the tab. I'll work 2 days a week, 1 day a week, whatever. And so then I've been part-time off and on over the years. And then as of just over a year ago, I came on full time and, work 50 plus hours a week, but it's about as chill as a job gets. And, it's not strenuous work. I've worked way worse jobs. And, I treat the business like it's my own. It's me and the owner have a good relationship. We were friends before I came on full time and stuff. And he's very trusting. You have to have, and that we've had some people work in the past, and it's like finding people that are reliable. And this is any job. This is any business. Finding people that are reliable and actually going to show up and do what you need them to do, and all that stuff can be very hard to find. So, I rely on him because obviously it's my income. He relies on me because I show up all the time. Sometimes if he needs me to come in for half a day or something on my day off, I'm like, sure. When you like your job, working isn't really work in my opinion. And I mean, I just genuinely enjoy being in there. There's a lot of days off where I actually go there in the morning and hang out for an hour or two and then go about my day. And
you can't really consider it work if you're doing what you enjoy and you get paid for it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what is your thoughts on the fact that, like, in my state, they just made 21 the legal age to buy tobacco products? It's no longer 18.
With cigars, it's really not going to affect us that much. The younger crowd, like anyone under 21, or really a lot of people under 25 to 30, like we don't get a lot of younger cats in the cigar shop. A lot of it's younger Marines most of the time, because I'm here in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is where Parris Island is for the Marine Corps. It's one of the recruiting depots, and then the Marine Corps Air Station. So there's a lot of pilots and stuff. So we do get, if we're getting younger folks in, it's usually Marines that are just coming to hang out with their boys, or maybe they're getting married and so they're grabbing some for their friends, whatever. But outside of that, I mean, we honestly don't see that many younger people. It's a much older demographic. So
that's probably a lot from the war too. You got to think, a lot of like people in my grandparents' age getting cigars because that's what they did in the military. That was always the most badass, more alpha male thing they can possibly do. Like, yo, is that a chick? Yo, put the cigar in my mouth. Take a picture so I look badass. It's literally like if you see the whole factor of people holding up a beer in a picture nowadays, they just show everybody that they're partying out. Like, that's what you do when you take a picture with a cigar, like I was doing. You're showing everybody, hey, I live an interesting life too. But it's it's funny because I think when it comes to cigars being a manly thing, like the woman that was running the shop that I went to, she was she's female. She's older. She knew a hell of a lot more than probably a lot more people know about cigars. And she was just telling me the interesting things about how she got started. She's at the coolest part about talking to people that smoke cigars is their stories of how they got started with it. Have you heard any fascinating things or anything that you could tell me that really kind of changed your mind on something in a cigar shop?
One of the guys that works for us part-time, he's originally from up in Maryland. And he's older. He's, I think, in his late 60s, if I'm not mistaken. And he's Muslim, which is interesting because if you look at him, you would never know it. He's not the stereotypical sort of what we, what people think of Muslims or anything like that. He's extremely democratic in his political alignment, which is also something strange because cigar shops, you really don't see a lot of that, at least not on a regular basis. And so we have interesting conversations all the time. It's in the climate that we have right now with social media and politics and stuff like that, it gets so volatile so quick.
Everybody's looking for fucking stress relief, man.
Dude, everyone's looking for a fight is what it is. Like, you disagree with anybody, you can't be friends with them. And it's just...
And it pisses me off. I don't know if you saw Dave Chappelle's new comedy special.
I did.
Funny as shit.
It was great.
I texted comedians. I texted people of different colors. I texted transgender people. I texted everything under the sun. I podcasted with hundreds of people. I've met wonderful people. They all said the same shit. Funny as hell.
Yeah.
I said, but you weren't offended by it? No. Anybody that gets offended by it is taking what we call hate culture a little bit too far. They're looking to throw their opinion in something it doesn't need their opinion in. There's a point. You pay for a comedy show. You can't be offended if one of you don't agree with one of the jokes. You know, I feel like.
Well, there was I was listening to Joe Rogan's show the other day, and he was kind of talking about that. And he's like, man, there used to be a point where like comedians kind of got a pass on all that stuff. And he's like, we're now at a point where that's not the case anymore. Where it was like it was expected for comedians to say outrageous things that probably offended a lot of people, but everyone's like, oh, it's Eddie Murphy, it's whatever.
It's technology now, man. We've committed our life to being connected to people, but we committed it in the wrong aspect of not having conversations like me and you are having,
right?
About having Facebook posts, everything like this. Facebook started off people letting other people know what they were doing.
Yep.
Okay, I understand that. And then we saw around 2010, all these types of things. It took off in a completely different direction.
Yep.
It went in the way of people just bitching about their day because they didn't have anybody else to talk to because no one else wanted to sit there and listen to someone else's problems the whole time. Then you see it get worse. Nowadays, what's popular every time you go on Facebook, memes. Okay.
Now it's just Thunderdome, man. Like you can't even on the podcast page for the Herpeticulture podcast, I'll post some stupid meme or something, and it never fails. There's always one person, like one asshole that pipes up and has to suck the fun right out of it. It'll be a meme about a picture of like, I don't know, a rattlesnake or something. Will be some joke about it being a boa or a python. There's always that one guy that's like, that's not a boa, that's not a python, that's a rattlesnake. It's like, well, no shit, dude, it's a joke.
Yeah, and I always find it funny how someone has to throw their opinion in that. And the one thing they don't throw their opinion on when it comes to a meme is when it's a meme about depression. When
no one says a word.
Those are popular memes nowadays, and only the concept of everyone laughs when they read it because everyone is dealing with it now. Everyone has depression. You're seeing it happen at younger and younger ages, and I'm like, and you're wondering why kids are experimenting with drugs nowadays. You wonder why there's an opioid addiction. You wonder why all these things are happening to our country. We're basically turning into this life of comfortability and sadness because going out and inspiring to what we want to do is going to offend somebody. We're relying too much faith in social media. We're structuring our lives off celebrities and no longer structuring our lives off innovators anymore.
Yeah.
People are flawed, okay? We have something inside of us that we make errors, we make mistakes, and we learn from them. But sadly now, we're not holding those mistakes accountable for things. When I do something wrong, let me know I fucked up because I want to know what I did wrong and make sure not to do it again. But the problem is everyone got a goddamn participation trophy.
Yeah. I think as far as the depression stuff goes, I think that's much more based around just the fact that you're seeing all the other cool stuff everyone else is doing, or what they make you think they're doing. Them posting a picture of them in the Bahamas, you're like, man, that looks awesome. You don't know that they're now like $5,000 in debt because they had to take that trip. So like, yeah, they look like they're happy, but behind closed doors, they're probably miserable. And I think there's just that, even if it's on a subconscious level, there's that comparison of, well, this person's doing that, this person just graduated college, man, I dropped out, it's like.
We live in a judging society. I've talked to people that are from other countries that come over here and they go, this place, everybody's two-faced. I'm like, what do you mean? Because I've been kind of discovering this myself, but from being another country coming in, what do you think? They go, I know when I talk to you, Robbie, it's real. It's real conversation, and this is what I try and promote in my podcast. Cuss. I have so many people, can we cuss on here? Can we do this? I'm like, I cuss in my everyday fucking life. My grandma listens to my podcast and goes, she goes, oh, you cuss in your podcast. I didn't know this side of you. I'm like, I cuss in my everyday life, Grandma, but when I'm eating Grandma's pancakes, I don't need to drop a fuck or shit, okay?
Right. I'm the same way.
It's literally like there's a time and place for it. But I tell people, cursing is not something I ever look at as being an aggressive act. I look at it as it's a stress relief because, if I can't find something, if I can't get something or something falls through, I go, shit. That sucks. Next thing I know, I have someone going, are you angry? Are you upset? Like backing away from me like I'm some type of dangerous animal. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not an animal. I'm a person. Bill Burr says it best. He just curses just to curse sometimes. It's like a Boston thing. And I'm like, why is it a Boston thing? It should be a people thing. You know how many people would receive so much relief from their everyday stress life, everything, if they just dropped a cuss word every now and again?
Just walked outside. And said, fuck.
Yeah, like literally looked up at the sky and the clouds are literally saying
Yeah.
fuck back at you. You're like, thank
Yeah.
you. I knew it. And it's funny because it brings me into my next question. Now, you have a fascination with one of the things that is very hard for a lot of people to get over, mostly on just the outside and
Yeah.
the rough layers. Snakes, bro. What are you, Steve Irwin? Are you trying to?
I mean, I got a bunch. I'm in the snake room right now. I moved today, so today's been chaotic. Um, and so, I mean, speaking of the cursing thing, I must have said "God damn it" probably 100 times a day while moving. I was just flustered. We had that class thing we went to tonight, and it was just that ran longer than I wanted it to, and so I was like, oh my god, like today's never gonna end.
I just want to get home with my cigars and my snakes.
Pretty much, and that's what it boiled down to. I was like, I need nicotine and I need caffeine, at some point, and I managed to sneak in a short smoke before the class, and I got a monster.
How'd you get dived into the realm of snakes? Because I have a buddy who has worked at pet shops, worked at all these things, and
Mm-hmm.
he's I always knew he was gay, like through school. I was just like, dude, I
Yeah.
didn't know it. I could read people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally came out like after high school, and he was like, I don't know how you knew it before I did. And I was like, dude, because it's just there was just something about you that was a little bit different. He gave me a bunch of shit too. Like, people are like, stop making fun of him. And then when he came out, I was like, I fucking knew it. I knew it. You called me an asshole, and I wasn't. And he goes, yeah, man, I didn't know what was going on. And he has a fascination with snakes. And I'm like, why do you love snakes so much? He's like, I don't know. I can just relate to them. I'm like, is it because
Yeah.
they have
You can't explain it, man.
they have a rough exterior, but they're really like sensitive on the inside. They're actually very caring.
It's an obsession that I've had since as far back as I can remember. I mean, I had some of my first snakes at, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years old. And I was really obsessed with dinosaurs before that. And and it's so bizarre because a lot of people that have been in this hobby a long time got into it the exact same way. They were obsessed with dinosaurs. They realized quickly that they wouldn't be able to catch or find dinosaurs outside. And so reptiles were kind of the next best thing.
What types of stuff have you learned dealing with snakes?
Oh man, a lot, man. Like I said, this is a hobby that's been around almost my entire life. It's all I've really ever known. It's the only hobby that's really stuck with me long term. Because some stuff kind of comes and goes. My dad was military, so he moved around a lot, and so it was kind of the one of the things that was always there, no matter where we went. Whether it was Hawaii or Connecticut or Virginia or Charleston, like that hobby was always there, and I could always enjoy it. Because we moved a lot, I changed friends a lot, so you learn to become fairly independent pretty quickly. And so this was kind of like my little obsession, that I could take with me.
Snakes for me, they get shown really, really bad light when it comes to like nature documentaries of all the poisonous ones, all the ones that can kill you. I'm like, well, there's millions of things that can kill you. Consuming too much water can kill you. Like you have to take it where it stands. Like I remember going into a video game store and a dude had a snake wrapped around his neck, and I was like, this guy is a savage. This guy does not shit with toilet paper. He doesn't do anything. He just wipes his ass with a stick and walks out. He was the nicest dude I have ever met, and he was telling me, he's like, you want to pet my snake? I was like, I'm good. He's like, dude, just try. And he threw the snake upon my shoulders, and immediately I was filled, my pants were filled with shit, but at the same time I was like, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be. It was gross, I'm not gonna lie, the kind of the skin and scaliness of it, but I'm like, this thing is actually, it doesn't feel like it wants to kill me. And as it slowly constricted itself around my neck, I had a little bit of fear, but it was the concept of like, when people talk about what's the most like a dangerous animal or what's the scariest animal they can think of, they think of one of two things: it's spiders or snakes.
Spiders and snakes, yeah.
And I'm like, but it's not true. Like a garden snake, there's stuff that's very beneficial to having a garden snake in your garden, on the concept of it keeps animals out. It keeps them away from little rabbits eating your vegetables or something that you're trying to grow.
And people don't understand that they play such a huge role, not only in just, rodent populations, but it trickles down from there. They're a big influencer in tick populations because ticks right on the mice. Snakes eat the mice, which have the ticks. So they kill off ticks in the process that might carry Lyme disease or any number of other things. See, I don't know, like, because I think about it all the time. I'm like, what is it about these things that people are so freaked out by? Is it just because they don't have arms and legs? Like, I don't know. I've been around them so long now. I'm like, yeah, cool. It's a snake.
It's the same reason you're afraid of it. It's the same reason people are afraid of crocodiles. They look at that thing. That's a fucking dinosaur practically.
Yeah,
That's a really scaly, slimy thing. The problem is when it comes to people, we're very scared of things that are different. We don't like to look at things differently. We want things that relate as much as possible to us. Oh, it has fur on it. It's fluffy. It's cuddly.
right.
I'm like, but that's not always true. I've seen some pretty damn savages on a page.
More people get killed by dogs every year than snakes.
Yeah, and the weird thing is more people get killed by coconuts than sharks every year.
Yeah,
That's fucking strange.
it's just, I don't know, man. It's really bizarre. I think it's a learned behavior more than anything else. I think people they're raised, they grow up in homes with parents that don't like snakes, and they're like, these things are horrible. They're disgusting. They'll chase you. They'll kill you. They'll bite you. Every single one of them is the deadliest thing in the world. Every single one of them is 20 feet long, even though it's 6 inches or whatever. It's just a learned behavior because there's some kids you give if any small child is around snakes, they kind of have a natural curiosity to it. But you have a kid maybe a few years older where their parents have told them, snakes are dangerous. Don't ever touch snakes. And to a degree, I do agree with telling kids, like, don't touch snakes, period. Whether you can identify it or not, don't touch it because stuff happens. Kids are, because they're curious, they're going to get into trouble some way or another. But it's a learned behavior. If you teach them to respect them, you don't have to fear them, but you do have to understand that there are some that can hurt you. I don't see a need to really scare. Like I have a 6-year-old, and I pull out this big guy over here every now and then, and he's puppy dog tame. I still don't. I don't care how tame a snake is. If it's around children, I have the head end. Nothing can happen if you're in control of that, that space. And she, I don't know, she won't touch him. She's scared. Like she's like, I don't want to touch it. And then she'll kind of get curious and she'll be like, well, I kind of do. And then you'll bring it close. Oh, I don't want to touch him. Okay. So you can see the kind of the back and forth in her mind of like, she's curious enough to try it, but for some reason she has this fear that I don't know where it came from, but it was a learned behavior. It was never, we don't come out of the womb saying, oh man, snakes, every single one of them is dangerous. Every single one of them will kill you. Every single one of them will constrict you. I do think to a degree there is this primal like lizard brain instinct of you see a snake, like if you're walking. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw the video or not on my Instagram, but I was walking yesterday and there was a green snake I almost stepped on, which they're completely harmless. They don't even bite. And even for a second, it was kind of like, oh, wait, that's a snake. You get this like nanosecond of just lizard brain, like primal caveman, like, whoa, like what was that?
Pick it up, smash it on a rock.
Yeah, to a degree. And then like after that, you're like, oh wait, that's a green snake. Like it's harmless. I chased it down, picked it up, did a little Instagram video, released it, kept on walking. So
I think I chalk up the example. Like there was my grandparents grew up on I spent there on summers. They live on a farm, so spend my summers there growing up a little bit. And just mowing the grass, there'd be a snake, and just seeing all these types of things that I was freaked out by, just because of what my parents saying, "Oh, snakes are dangerous. They'll kill you. They'll do all these types of things that you're talking about." And I'm like, I don't know, because a lot of times there has been times I felt like I was protected in a way. We did have some poisonous. I don't know if black snakes are poisonous.
No.
There's one that was under the shed. It was kind of freaky. Every time I try and get the lawnmower out, he was out there, and it just freaked me out even seeing it. I was like, oh shit, but it could have been harmless. And it's the concept of we choose to believe in these notions that people tell us without truly experiencing something ourselves, and we let that fear keep us closed-minded forever, and we don't ever choose to let our opinions get
Mm-hmm.
changed. You know what I mean? I want to definitely take more time going into, because I always found the one part of the pet shop I would never dive into is the one with the tarantulas and the ones with the
Yeah.
snakes in the back end. I'm like, why the fuck are they keeping these things in the back? Let's keep them in the front. Show people, like, maybe you might get less people walking in your door if you had snakes greeting them right at the
Mm-hmm.
front, not the little beautiful puppies that you have up there. You know what I mean? It's that's the reason why a lot of these things don't really get adopted, don't really get bought by someone that doesn't know a whole lot about snakes. Like the average
Mm-hmm.
everyday consumer is not going to go buy a snake. It just freaks them out in a way. It has to be the person that, and then they're considered weird snake people. I'm like, look, I met a dude in my college class. We had a speech class together, and he was telling everybody about how his family breeds these specific type of pythons that it's been in his
Probably
family.
ball pythons.
And he's going off about all these wonderful things about snakes, how beneficial it has. He
Mm-hmm.
brought a snake into class, and everyone's freaking out, like, like afraid to touch it. And I'm just like, I have to. I got to. I just walked up.
Yeah. And it's funny, you notice that. You ever go to an event, whether it's at a zoo or an aquarium or whatever, there's someone, maybe one of the staff just has a small corn snake or something out. Like, even if you're scared of them, you can't help but be curious and look at it. Even if it's from a distance. Like, they may not touch it, but they're still curious enough at it to investigate it at least a little bit.
It's actually the same reason why if a parent has a gun in the home and you have a small kid, you have to
Mm-hmm.
let them know that this is there, and you have to let them touch it and kind of get a feel for it themselves, just because they're always going to have that curiosity of what it is like. Can you just let me hold it? And it's like, well, it's a gun. You're not ever supposed to touch it. Yeah, but if you don't let me hold it now, there's going to be a time you're at work and you might not have it locked up one day, and I'm going to grab it myself. So you might as well
Mm-hmm.
let me do it with your supervision so I know what it is and I know what the experience is like. That makes it completely understandable. Like, okay, here, there's no ammo in it. Here, just look at
Mm-hmm.
it. You know what I mean? People are naturally curious. Curiosity killed the cat. That's a saying
Yeah.
for a reason. If you're curious about it and you're going to sit there and listen to all your preconceived notions, there's going to be one day where you end up buying a fucking snake, or you end up diving into the wrong realm when it comes to meeting a snake.
Mm-hmm.
Might be like, oh, and then think it's going to be like, maybe this is the chance I can fix myself. And next thing you know, you get your hand taken off or something.
There's actually a lot of people in the hobby that they get their first snake as a way of sort of inoculating themselves, and them, maybe they're scared, but they're curious. And so that curiosity drives them to buy something simple, be it a corn snake, a ball python, whatever. And then they kind of, like, those barriers that they had before mentally just disintegrate, and they realize just how kind of mellow they are, that they're not anything like what people think they are. They're there, they're not mindless killing machines. They really want nothing to do with us, especially in the wild.
How did you go from the amazing factor of working at a cigar shop, then going over to good old snakes, those wonderful things, and then diving into a podcast? Like, you probably have barely any free time.
I put a lot of time into this. I mean, my collection really isn't that big. I've got maybe, I think last I counted, it's somewhere in the ballpark of about 40 snakes, which in the scheme of most collections, that's not huge. That's not small. But yeah, I mean, it's almost a full-time job, man. There's not a day that I'm not in here, at least checking up on things or doing water changes, cleaning, feeding everybody, this, that, and the other. The podcast thing just came up because I met my buddy Jake, who I do the Herpetoculture podcast with. We ended up stumbling upon each other on Instagram, found out we lived in the same town, found out we liked the same snakes, which to me, like, finding another guy that was into the same stuff that I was as far as snakes go, was like, this is a sign. Like, I'm not religious, but I was like, this is almost eerie. And so we had hung out for a little bit, and a couple weeks, and I had been kicking around the idea of doing a podcast because I'm familiar with GarageBand. I used to play music a lot. I was a drummer. I was in a band and stuff, so I was fairly familiar with GarageBand and microphones and the works. I was like, man, I bet you it wouldn't be that hard to do. And so I said I didn't want to do it by myself, so I went to Jake. I was like, hey man, you want to start a podcast? And he did. Man, that was a year and a half ago, and we're about 51 episodes deep. And I mean, it's been great. It's been awesome. It's actually, I'm introverted almost to a fault. but it's really helped as far as confidence and just being able to talk to people. Like when you force yourself to talk to strangers and people you've never talked to before, especially people maybe in the hobby you look up to, or guys that have been in it a lot longer that have accomplished way more than you, like being able to sit down and have a one-on-one talk with them and learn from them, and has really been a big help as far as my social skills. Because
For me, I'm an introvert too. I closed myself off for so long because I was made fun of, saying I was annoying, saying every time I talked, it seemed like it was like I was just constantly living by people's judgment. And
Mm-hmm.
then at a point, I was like, why am I giving a fuck about what people are saying about me? Even though that I would just meet them for 5 minutes out of my life if I bump into them at the store and I don't see them anytime after that. It didn't make any sense to me. So I realized this was something that I needed to get out there. From a buddy calling me on basically top of his house drunk, and I hadn't talked to him 5 years after we
Mm-hmm.
graduated high school. We just ate lunch together, and just he was like, "You're one of the realest people I've ever met. I'm suffering from severe depression. I feel like my whole life's structured, and I'm kind of going through it myself, just being introverted, feeling like I was just kind of alone." And I was telling him, I was like, dude, I was giving him this advice. He's like, you're so smart, man. I always knew I could count on you. And I'm sitting there like, dude, I'm not even taking my own advice. We're all experiencing this. This is why kids our age are now addicted to alcohol. They're getting drunk in a bar every single night, is because we're looking for something.
Yeah, people just don't know how to deal with the day-to-day bullshit, you know?
You can't cope with the world's problems because the world's
Mm-hmm.
problems, we focus. We're very, very sensitive when it comes to so much of things that go on, but we're not dealing with the proper way of handling our problems anymore. Sadly, the easiest way for us to complain about our problems is to let it build up and then complain about it on social media and wait for that like and that acceptance from some random stranger, some person that's following you in fucking
Yeah.
Albuquerque, to give you that acceptance. Like, yay, my opinion matters. I'm going to keep getting it out there. But
Mm-hmm.
sadly, it's not the right type of mattering. Like me sitting here talking to you, having a conversation, like just trying to get this stuff to go happen with the podcast. I put up a new episode every day. Each person is an amazing conversation that I
Oh,
have.
you do them daily?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm about at 100, and I think tomorrow will be 129, and that's
Wow.
it's gonna be your episode. So it's but I have 80 saved on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
I've been up since 1 a.m. I've done 10 2-hour podcasts. You're probably the 12th today, and it's not to let people know like I don't belittle anybody. It's not like I'm just trying to get a bunch of information.
No, but I mean, you put in the work, man.
It's because I care. It's like
Yeah.
I have days I work, I have days I can't film podcasts, and I work with time zones. I'll work
Mm-hmm.
from someone in UK, work from someone in Jamaica, work from it's all about experience, and I give everybody at least an hour just to
Mm-hmm.
come on here and have the conversation. It seems like the average is that time. Like I've had people message me, "Hey, I got 20 minutes. I can give you this. I'm just going to talk about this, and this is what I'm interested in. You can send me all your credentials. You can send me everything you're doing. You can send me
Mm-hmm.
all that. I don't give a shit." Sadly, I am going to talk about it in the podcast, but I'm not going to sit there and be like, you can't come on my show. You don't have enough credentials.
Right.
I've talked to kids that are 17 years old that are just graduated high school, don't know what the hell they want to do with their life, and they just message me off Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a good conversation talking about fucking Bigfoot 2 hours later. Like
Yeah.
we all think the same. We all come down to the same basis in the podcast, that people are walking around with a mask. Nobody's comfortable anymore. And when it is comfortability, it's the fact that the only time they can ever truly be free or comfortable is when they're sitting at home, lying in bed, watching Netflix, because life, going out, experiencing anything besides work or being forced to do something is too damn hard.
Mm-hmm.
We don't communicate with anything but the phone anymore. Snapchat,
Yep.
all that stuff. I tell my buddies, I used to start this podcast off in person. That was hard to even post one every single day. I had to post it up and every couple of days. It's when I did my spinoff podcast called Fill in the Blank. And
Mm-hmm.
it was hard because people were so unreliable. People you thought like, I'll be there, man. Let's plan it out a weekend ahead.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
planned it out the day of, 5 minutes before they're supposed to be here. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
bro, can't make it. Something came up. Then I wouldn't hear back from them, and I see they're out at a bar or something. I'm like, all right, man. Like I had to be patient with it, and I had to take my stand. And then I dived into where this outlet, around 80 episodes in, gave me a way to talk to people from around the world, and
Mm-hmm.
it's changed everything because this is easier for people. It's easier to do this than coming to someone's house or coming over and talking to someone in person, because
Yeah.
you can still sit in the comfortability of your own home. I'm trying to eliminate that. we're all suffering from depression. I'm trying to eliminate it one person at a time. When it comes to you fucking matter, dude. Justin Smith, you matter, okay? Well, I know you believe it, but guess what? You do. It doesn't matter who out there thinks so. It doesn't matter. You know what matters is I've been able to have a conversation with you, and we've been able to shoot the shit. And I knew nothing about you before this happened. I just knew you did a podcast, and I knew you did I'm learning everything I want to know on the podcast. People go, you don't have specific topics you talk about? No, if there's something you don't want to talk about, I guarantee you're probably not going to talk about it anyway. You know?
Yeah, and I like that though, because I mean, that's how I kind of did THP for a while, and then just within the last, I don't know, 10 episodes or so, I've been trying to do a little bit more of an outline just so I can keep things on track, because I'll go on tangents constantly. So for the sake of keeping it on track, I'll just have some questions kind of dotted out and just, make sure I'm hitting all of them and that I'm not missing anything, because I'll also forget to ask questions, important stuff. But I do like just more the like what you do, the conversation, just kind of the free throw. Like it's just dudes hanging out talking about snakes or lizards or whatever we're doing that week.
I use the example, like, it's like when you have a bonfire and you're sitting there at 2
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning having a conversation with someone. You don't know what's said, but you get a bond with that person you're always going to remember. Like that was a good fucking conversation. And I tell people, like, before I put up their episode, because usually I wait a week before I put it up, I just tell them, like, hey, like, I hope you had fun on it. It was awesome. Let me get all your information and put in the details and everything. And they go, yeah, dude, it was great conversation. It was crazy how time flew. I'm like, it doesn't take much to take at least an hour to talk to someone.
It goes by quick.
Yeah, and whether it's like I agree with them or not, I'm sitting there, I'm open-minded, I'm trying to be open to everything. So when someone's telling me, like, if you don't believe in Christ, you're not gonna survive in this world. I'm like, all right, well, you got to understand, I'm looking at it from your perspective, but I got to bring in the other side as well. I got to bring in that even though coming from your perspective, snakes are awesome, snakes are badass, but for most people, they're not, because of the fact they are just too damn different. Because if we sat here and both agreed on the same thing constantly, it doesn't make any good conversation. That doesn't bring up any points. You're not bringing up anything. Sad thing is, we're comfortable and we're accepting of one-sided information. There's too much stuff out there to learn. There's constantly new evidence being brought back on something. We thought the Earth was the center of the solar system. Everything revolved around the Earth, and then Galileo exposed it, and then he got condemned by the church. Okay, there's these things throughout history. We've constantly 5-10 years later, whatever you thought was right the whole time turns out to be wrong. There's always new evidence coming up. I'm like, so how can you be so confided to just one simple answer when I think there's so many different things that could just interpret a different answer?
Definitely. And the snake stuff, man, people ask all the time, oh, you keep snakes, you keep anything poisonous, and so what they're going to ask. If you've been doing it long enough, there's already like a bingo game of questions that are going to fly out of somebody's mouth, and you're like, no, none of them are poisonous. No, none of them are free roaming in the house like they're a cat or a dog. Like, no, they're all not in one cage together. It's pretty funny. And then, of course, the thing that will drive me and pretty much anybody else in the hobby absolutely berserk, and I never understand why people do this, is I'll say, oh, yeah, I keep snakes. And the first thing they jump to is, oh, yeah, last year, last month, last week, whatever, I saw one in my yard and I killed it.
Why?
And people do that all the time. And I'm like, I just told you, like, I enjoy these and I like these. And you're just going to flat out tell me, like, yeah, I saw a copperhead or a cottonmouth that chased me the other day and I killed it with a shovel.
Why is it the manliest thing people can think of is killing a snake?
The only thing I can sort of extrapolate from the whole thing is that it's just their way of sort of relating, and it's the wrong way. Because if people were like, yeah, I love cats, it's like, cool. Well, I trapped 4 last week and shot them with a 22.
Yeah,
people would be absolutely outraged. People would be freaking out. But you say that you keep snakes or spiders. They're like, I had this house spider that was the size of my palm in the house the other day, and I squashed it, and babies went everywhere.
I just make an agreement with spiders. Like, don't fuck with me in the shower, and I don't care where the fuck you go, to be honest with you. So just stay away from me.
I used to not be a fan of spiders, believe it or not. There was a point in time where almost all I kept were scorpions and tarantulas. I had a very big phase of invertebrates. and I bought my buddy, who is somewhat obsessed with black widows and some other spiders. I got him a tarantula for his birthday. It was just a rose hair, whatever they call them these days. I forget. It seems the common name seems to change all the time. But I got him one of these things, and he had it for a couple months. And then after a while, he was like, "Man, you want it back?" He's like, I don't know. I don't really want to take care of it. Not that tarantulas need almost any maintenance. So I ended up taking it back, and I really wasn't a fan of spiders at the time, man. But I kept this thing, and it wasn't I wasn't so much not a fan that I would kill any spider I saw. It was just like they're cool. I'll look at them, but I'm not going to touch them. But I got this tarantula from him, and I kind of realized I was like, these things are actually really interesting. Like they're cool. Like they're cool animals. And so I just went balls to the wall, man. I got so many spiders over the course of, I don't know, 2 or 3 years that I was doing it. And now I love them. I mean, this is a tarantula tattoo right here. Like, this is one of my favorite species that I kept while I was in them. And they're another thing, just like snakes. Like, they're severely misunderstood. Like, yeah, they're kind of creepy looking. Like, if they're moving fast, I can understand why people are kind of like, gives them the heebie-jeebies. But they're just, I mean, they're cool animals. They're just as misunderstood as snakes are. Like,
I
they
think
don't want anything to do with you either.
The most primal animals are the scariest in a lot of people's minds. I think spiders, like I saw, my cousin sent me a video at like 2:00 in the morning. He's out in the garage and he took a straight up video of a spider that had a fly trapped in its web. You see the beginning of this fly freaking out, trying to get out of it. The spider came down real quick, wrapped it, came back up, went back down again, and kept doing that 8 or 9 times, just wrapping it and slowly constricting it into its web, and then at the ending bit right into its head.
Yeah.
My cousin zoomed in on his phone, got the whole damn thing on video. It's a good 5 minutes, man. I said, let me nature document that, please. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm going to get on the mic and go, here we have the average day spider. It's coming down and killing its prey, much like any political figure killing the emotions of the people around them. And I'm like, and we were talking about doing this. I'm like, I want to do a nature documentary on this shit. The funniest one I've ever seen is with Snoop Dogg, where he was talking about snakes. He goes, holy shit, what is that? What is that? That's one of them Pythoneses. And he's like, what the hell? He's talking like, that thing gonna kill. And it's him. It's a freaking snake fighting a mongoose.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's like its natural predator or something.
Yeah, in India, I think, and I'm sure some other countries in that general area, they're pretty commies.
It's funny because in your podcast, like looking through your episodes and stuff, I listened to a couple. You go into the information about these snakes too. Like you talk about specific breeds and you talk about certain things, kind of narrowing down questions. I mean, like for anyone out there that's looking to buy a snake or just get interested into the world of snakes, what's the easiest advice and things you can give them? Like they're not that bad.
I mean, maintenance wise, yeah, for a pet, they're nothing like a cat or a dog or a hamster or a gerbil. Like, I feed these guys, like the smaller stuff gets fed once a week. The bigger stuff gets fed like once a month. Some of the species I do water changes twice a week. Some of them I do them once a week, every other week. And they're really low maintenance. They don't smell. They don't make noise. They don't shed hair.
What about skin shedding? That's a big thing too.
They do that, but I mean
why do they shed their skin? To be honest with you, I really don't.
They grow. I mean they get bigger. They have to expand somehow, and so the old skin separates from the old, and eventually that old just comes off, and they've outgrown that previous skin, and so
it's like when a crab molts a shell. It's
exactly
into a whole different thing.
It's
getting bigger. That's interesting, man. Because I know, like, I watched one of my buddies feed a snake like a mouse, and seeing that, I was like, you're sick. You're feeding it a live animal. He goes, well, things eat, man. What did you think your food was before it was? And I was like, that's true.
People lose sight of that. I'm really not that big of a fan of feeding live. I'll do it if I absolutely have to. Like there's some snakes, they want nothing to do with, because typically what I do is I go to the freezer, pull out whatever mice I need of different sizes, thaw them out and feed them. Some of them, they for whatever reason, like frozen thaw just doesn't do it for them. And if you give them something live, they'll snap it up in a heartbeat. It's not my favorite thing to do. I do it if I absolutely have to, but to me, I'm into, no matter what what living thing it is, I want it to suffer as little as possible. I want it, if it's going to die, I want it to be as quick and as painless as I can possibly make it. And I don't know, I'm not into it. And I think it makes the reptile hobby as a whole look kind of bad when they're posting these YouTube videos of people, feeding live mice to snapping turtles and, feeding their snakes live. And it's just, I don't like the animal activist groups like PETA.
Yeah, they ruined animal crackers for
Well,
me.
they're constantly looking for ways to put legislation onto the hobby so that no one can own any animal, even if it's a cat or a dog. And so that kind of like those kind of videos and stuff just kind of fuel that fire a little bit for them. Like they can go to legislators and be like, hey, look at all these sick fucks. They're
Well, the government
feeding mice to snakes live and filming it and laughing in the process. And
the government lets it all pass too, on the concept of the government's working on deeper and darker shit, and it keeps PETA off their ass. That's why PETA, they won the thing with the animal crackers. They used to have animals behind cages on the animal crackers.
Oh, I never noticed that.
They don't have them anymore. They're all open because PETA passed this thing and signed this, like basically had a riot and a petition saying they need to take it off because it's cruelty to animals. Well, government's like, okay, as long as you don't focus on the shit we're doing in this country. And the next thing you know, it got passed. And now, but my childhood box of animal crackers, the whole carny experience you would get from it, like, wow, they're talking about like animals at a freak show or animals at a circus or something. Nope, not anymore, because now all the animals are free, and now sooner or later the animal crackers are all probably going to be the same animal.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of circuses. I'm kind of glad they've sort of dwindled, but to take it as far as to be like, that's a drawing of animals in cages, we need to get rid of it. That takes it. There's always got to be people that take it like that one step further than it has to go. And it's like I said, just like the Facebook commenters, they just suck the fun out of it. Like it just has to be so PC, and it can't, everything just has to be so straight faced. And
You know how easy it is to just not look at something that bothers you? It literally takes no effort just to minimalize it. But sadly, people nowadays, nobody ever takes the really shot to write a good review about anything. You're gonna take more of a shot to write something shitting on something else.
oh yeah,
else is doing.
yeah, people are like something like 5 times more likely to write a bad review than they are good. And they're they're even more likely to tell their friends about a bad experience. Like if you go to a restaurant or something that was horrible, you're much more likely to tell your friends about how bad that restaurant was rather than, man, that was really good. Like I think they've done studies on it. Like the numbers are huge. Like people will tell everyone in town. They will scream it from the rooftops if they went to a restaurant and they had, a shitty service or shitty food. But if they went to a restaurant, it was like knocked it out of the park. Like I'll definitely be back probably tomorrow, next week, whatever. They'll tell, maybe 2 or 3 people. But if they had a shitty experience, man, they're going to tell probably 10. It's insane.
I think anybody that wants to really kind of take anything away from kind of ending up at the podcast here is just the concept of you need to make your own interpretations for things yourselves. You can't just listen to what people tell you to things to stay away from, because those things that, like a snake saying, don't go near snakes, they're dangerous. Well, you might have a deep interest and passion in snakes. You might have something about yourself that you feel like you can resonate with one of these animals. Some people feeling out of place, feeling like they get looked at by other people in the wrong light when they truly do have something inspiring about them. That's what people look at when they see snakes. They're just these monsters, these crazy creatures, when real deep down inside they're not really like that at all. They just have a rough exterior that gets people
Yeah.
hard damn to relate to.
They've got lives. They just want to live them. They're not exactly the smartest of creatures.
I'm an
But,
advocate for snake rights, for sure.
they just want to do their own thing. They don't want anything to do with us, and we hear that a lot too. Especially here in the Southeast, like, oh, a cottonmouth chased me last month. It's like, no, it didn't. Cottonmouths, straight up. I don't care what your uncle or your girlfriend's cousin's brother
Twice
told you. Cottonmouths, flat out, do not chase people. If a snake chases you, it's literally because you're between it and where it wants to go. Because, they do remember, like, they have little home sites and stuff. They do remember, like, if they have a hole by a tree, they know that that's their hole. Like, they know where to go. So if you're between them and that hole, like, guess what? that's the first place they're going to go because that's like familiarity. You know, they know where that is.
Yeah, if you're sitting off to the side, the snake's not just gonna stop what its path is going into, look over at you like, I'm gonna fuck with you for a minute. The snakes
Yeah,
don't do that.
you think people don't realize like you are so much bigger than them when you walk upon them. I mean, you're a giant. You know, they're like, oh crap, this thing's gonna eat me, and especially if it's a cottonmouth or something. Most of the time, people like, here's the cottonmouth, here's you, here's the water. Like, guess where it's gonna go because they like water. Straight. And if you're between it and that, it's not chasing you. It's literally just trying to get away from you. And people continue all the time. When I hear people say in the cigar shop all the time too, yeah, cottonmouth chased me once. I just shake my head. I'm like, no, it didn't. They're
There's
like, yes, it did. And I was like, okay. I don't even argue with them anymore. I'm like, totally sure.
Yeah, you probably have answers to all their everything someone stupid's gonna ask. You probably have automated responses, just like when
Oh
you
yeah.
call a voicemail or something like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're speaking with this."
I saw a 14-foot diamondback once. No, you didn't. Doesn't exist.
But you're sitting there just nodding your head just so you can get the conversation over with.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't even, but like, it's such a waste of energy kind of at this point because a lot of times it's older guys and they're not changing their ways because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You know, the Burmese python problem in Florida, you know, they're taking over the whole state of Florida. It's like, no, they're not.
No,
They're eating everything out of existence. They're not.
no,
You know, it's just whatever the news tells them, that's what they'll regurgitate. It's like,
Well, I really want to give you here a minute at the end to kind of promote where people can find your content
okay,
because it's been awesome talking to you, Justin. I
yeah,
really
man,
appreciate you taking the time to be on my podcast.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, which is kind of what I prefer to use over all these social media platforms because I don't have to see all the political bullshit, you can find me at Palmetto Coast Exotics. If you want to check out the podcast, that's also on Instagram at Herpetoculture Podcast. You can find it on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. It's on Facebook. You can follow us on there. And I mean, I'll have links to the ChondroCast and any other stuff I'm doing on the Palmetto Coast account as well. If you want to follow my personal account, which is pretty much entirely cigar related, on Instagram, it's at hazardous.tobacconist. That's it, man. I've got YouTube if you like videos, Palmetto Coast Exotics on YouTube.
Basically, follow this guy for any badass information on how you probably should be living your life when it comes to cigars and snakes. I mean, you can't go wrong.
That's pretty much it, man. Cigars, snakes, and music. That's about all I'm interested in. That's all I do. So,
Well, thank you so much, Justin, for being on my podcast, man.
thanks for having me on, man. I enjoyed it.